Hello everyone, this is the Catholic Thinker, and I recently saw a video by Dark Matter uh, titled, But Intelligent People Believe in God. So what I wanted to do was issue a response to it. I'm going to go ahead and briefly summarize what his argument was for those of you who haven't seen it. He makes the claim that just because an intelligent person believes in something doesn't mean that the claim is true. And then he proceeds to go on and show how it is possible for an intelligent person to believe a ridiculous claim. And most of you are probably already familiar with the type of argument that he uses, that he was indoctrinated as a young boy and grew up in a society that perpetuated the ridiculous claim, had all these different traditions and holidays and different things like that to support the ridiculous claim, until eventually he became an adult and still believes the ridiculous claim. And what kind of helps enforce the ridiculous claim is the promise of eternal reward if you believe it, and eternal suffering if you don't. And he makes a distinction that the ridiculous claim, in order for a ridiculous claim to survive, must have these different things to help it survive, while the truth doesn't require that. It's just there. All it needs is someone to find it. So I wanted to start off by saying, what exactly is meant when someone says, well, this intelligent person believes in God? Because at the very beginning of the video, the Dark Matter kind of makes an aside that, when a person says an intelligent person believes in God, they're simultaneously saying, please ignore all the stupid ones. Now, I can't exactly speak for others who make these claims or makes that claim, but whenever I say, well, this intelligent person believes in God, or here are some examples of intelligent people who believe in God, I'm not saying, therefore, the ridiculous claim or religion, as Dark Matter is calling it, I'm not saying that religion is false or true, or anything like that. What I am saying is I'm countering the claim, only fools or idiots believe the ridiculous claim, believe in religion, believe in a God. The person making that challenge, making that claim, is making a universal claim. It's like saying, all birds can fly. In order to disprove that all birds can fly, all that is needed is to show one bird, an ostrich. By showing that one bird, you have just disproven the claim, all birds can fly. So if an individual says only fools or idiots believe in the claims of religion, all I have to do is show one individual who is not a fool who believes in the claims of religion to disprove that claim. That is what the claim means. It's not asking you to ignore ridiculous people or anything like that. It's just countering the claim that only fools believe the ridiculous claim. So I want to kind of go into what he states, the different things that the ridiculous claim require in order to be passed on as truth. He states that the ridiculous claim requires indoctrination, communities, traditions, institutions, governments, apologetics, stigmatization, tribalism, incentives, and punishments. And that if it didn't have these things, the ridiculous claim will die out. Which is correct. If a ridiculous claim, not just religion, any ridiculous claim is being passed or held onto as true, and yet uses these techniques in order to, it has to use these techniques in order to be thought of and remained as true, while the truth doesn't require it. Now notice the distinction that both that I make as well as dark matter makes. It does not require it. The truth can still use these different dirty tricks, these dirty techniques. But I think a lot of people in watching this, and I think dark matter also makes the mistake himself, is that because it doesn't require it, it doesn't use them. I want to give some examples. Here's an example of an institution devoted to truth. NASA. It is devoted to the truth of the heavens, of astronomy, of the solar system. It is devoted to those truths. It's an institution, however. What about holidays? Well, we have Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a Memorial Day, a holiday devoted to the life and message of this man. We also have Independence Day, a national holiday devoted to a significant moment in American history. What about vocations? Vocations, properly understood, comes from the Latin word voco, meaning I call. It is a calling, a drive, something that you feel driven to become. It can be quite literally anything. Someone can have a vocation to be a vet. Someone can have a vocation to be a physicist. Someone can have a vocation to be a chemist. Someone can have a vocation to be a garbage collector. Whatever it is, there's a vocation for it. What about schools? I think dark matter does correctly use the term school to refer school of thought in his video. And again, you have different schools, different branches of studies within the scientific area. You have physics, you have astronomy, you have geology, you have oceanography. You have all these different schools of thought that focus on a particular aspect of the universe around us. What about affecting policies? You have global warming. You know, we used to not really be concerned about our use of oil, our use of coal, our use of different burning aspects. But now, due to the scientific discoveries of global warming and its effect, the effect that these CO2 gases have on our environment, that we're trying to enact political changes in the way that things are done to reflect political warming, or not global warming. What about ostracizing? I have seen many people being shunned by their friends and family because they don't fully accept or are skeptical of vaccinations or the claim that people are born homosexual or any number of things. They make a claim and say, well, I think it could be this. And instantly they are ostracized, they are rejected, they are ridiculed by the scientific, by those, maybe not necessarily by the scientists themselves, but definitely by those who claim to be followers of the scientists. He also brings up indoctrinations in communities. Those can take place with anything, not just ridiculous claims. It can take place with truth. Look at our government or our society today. There is a movement striving to bring, religion, because it is viewed as a ridiculous claim. It is viewed as false, out of schools. So we are trying to become a community devoted to truth. A community devoted to truth. And indoctrination is understood to be a person of authority telling an individual how and what the world is. Most often, it is associated with putting false claims into an individual and forcing the individual to believe those false claims. But that's not necessarily the case. Someone can be indoctrinated of a true claim, and yet nobody gets offended by that or upset over that because the claim is true. However, the methods done are exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the truthness, the value of truth associated with the claim. And what about incentives and punishments? How many of you have heard while attending school, you need to get good grades so that way you can be a successful individual and have a happy and wonderful life, and in other words, have a reward of a good life. Or if you start getting bad grades, you will never succeed in life. You will be punished. You won't have the riches that you want. You won't have a happy life. There's your incentive and your punishment. So the truth, or what I'm assuming dark matter would hold to as truth, being the scientific community, does indeed, or has people using these particular methods that the ridiculous claim uses as well. Which leads to my second point. Dark matter makes a logical fallacy in this video. Now, I have seen a couple of Dark Matters videos, and I have to say that I am impressed with his style, his argument, and the way he thinks. I've never been fully convinced by them, but he does present good arguments. However, at this particular video, he does commit a logical fallacy. His argument is what's called a conditional statement. If it rains, then the ground is wet, is a conditional statement. His argument is, if a ridiculous claim is being held to as true by intelligent people, then it is being held due to dirty tricks. Now, there are only two ways to prove a conditional statement. You either affirm the premise or deny the consequence. If you affirm the consequence or deny the premise, you don't really know anything. Let me continue with the if it rains, then the ground is wet in order to kind of demonstrate. If I say the ground is wet, therefore it rains, it doesn't actually logically follow. The ground is wet. It could have been made wet by a sprinkler, a water cup, a fire hydrant, anything, including rain. But we don't know if it was specifically rain that caused the ground to be wet in this situation. Or if we deny the premise, if we deny the premise, which is it did not rain, therefore the ground is not wet. Again, we run into the same situation. It could be wet due to any of the other causes for ground being wet. And yet, so we still don't know whether, we don't know anything other than what was either affirmed or denied. We can't pull any other conclusions from that. The only way that we can know a conclusion is if we affirm the premise, it rained. Therefore, we know that the ground has to be wet. It doesn't matter if it was made wet by a fire hydrant prior or by any other things. We know that the ground is wet because it rained. Or if we say the ground is not wet, then we know that none of the possible ways that the ground could be wet happened. Therefore, we know that it did not rain. So what did dark matter do here? He said, if a ridiculous claim is being held by intelligent people, then it was done so by dirty tricks. Religion uses these dirty tricks, therefore it is a ridiculous claim. he affirmed the consequence. I do want to investigate, while it is true that a lot of parents use these dirty tricks, I do want to investigate his claim. Does the church use these dirty tricks? I would say not in no way different than the way a lot of people teach science or anything else like that, especially for the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has always been open to studying different philosophical ideas, different philosophical notions. It still holds to what is true and what it believes to be true, yes. But it never has stated, or it's never avoided challenges against its claims. It's always met these challenges. For an example, in the Middle Ages, with the rise of the universities, you had people that were reading Plato. You had people that were reading Aristotle, both pagan philosophers. And for a lot of people that were very educated within the Catholic Church, they loved Plato, but they didn't like Aristotle because they felt Aristotle taught things contrary to the Catholic faith. But they still read, studied, and taught him. Aquinas was one of the first individuals to show how Aristotle actually works, not by twisting his words, not by making him say the opposite of what Aristotle actually said, but by showing how the logic of Aristotle, when it was correct, actually works with what the Catholic Church teaches, and he showed where the logic of Aristotle was incorrect. The Catholic Church also looked at and studied Moses Maimonides, who was a Jewish philosopher. They also studied Avicenna, Averroes, and Al-Ghazali, Islamic philosophers. And Al-Ghazali actually argues against philosophy, argues against a lot of different philosophical claims, and yet, a lot of claims that the church still holds to this day, philosophically speaking, and yet the church still studied and read and taught his ideas. I attended a Catholic university called the University of Dallas in Irving, Texas, and I studied philosophy there. We read and studied Plato, Aristotle, Descartes, Hume, Kant, Aquinas, Averroes, Avicenna, Al-Ghazali, Maimonides, Occam, as well as Galileo, among several others. Oh, I almost forgot, and there was a whole class that I attended that studied only Nietzsche, an atheist, an atheistic philosopher. The Catholic Church has never been afraid of challenges to its claims. It studies them and then teaches why they are wrong in clear, distinct language. You then also have the way classes were taught in the Middle Ages as well. You had the professor who would present the claim, and then the students had to argue. You had a group of students who would argue for it, and a group of students who would argue against it. And a debate would take place. The way classes were taught, and the way they tried to have classes taught at the university I went to, was you were presented a thinker, you were presented an individual, and it didn't matter, especially in the philosophy classes, whether you agreed or disagreed with the philosopher. What mattered was, could you present a logically consistent and valid argument either for or against this thinker. And the professor would grade you on that. Not whether or not he agreed with you, but how well did you make your argument. Thus, I don't think the Catholic Church uses these dirty tricks in order to formulate its ridiculous claim. What I do think takes place is a lot of people, just like in scientific communities, don't fully understand what the implications are for their claims, or how one can understand their claim. And because they don't fully understand that, when challenged, they're afraid of being wrong, and so they react in these dirty trick ways. But that's not a result of the claim itself, at least not for Catholicism. I'm not denying that these dirty tricks are used by individuals, but they aren't the intent or how the Church says it needs to be taught. So, in conclusion, to wrap up this video, I think Dark Matter did try to do a good job in explaining how an intelligent person can believe something that is false. And if that is all he was trying to do, then yes, he did an excellent, excellent job. But the problem is, he associates false claims with religion without showing why, and in fact, the only argument that he makes is a fallacious one. If a ridiculous claim is being held by an intelligent person, then it was done so by dirty tricks. People use dirty tricks to facilitate religion, therefore it is a ridiculous claim. That is not a logically valid argument. Therefore, I think you need to, if Dark Matter, if you see this, I think you need to re-look at why an intelligent person holds to religion, even when the ridiculous claims are removed. In fact, if you want, I would greatly recommend reading the life, not the teachings, but the life of Thomas Aquinas. He was imprisoned by his parents for wanting to follow his own way, his own ideas on how to study religion, on what it meant to be a religious figure. And yet he stuck with it. Thank you for watching.